You're a Jags fan, you're an NFL fan, and you're looking for the best Jaguars content out there, and it's right here on the Poojie Podcast. Subscribe to the channel, like the video, comment your thoughts, and enjoy the content. What is he doing? Nah, bro, I think he's legit. You just can't do that in that situation. Now, you couldn't be more wrong. Yeah, I could agree with that. This is the Poojie Podcast. What is going on, Pooch Crew? Thank you for being here for episode 145 of the Poojie Podcast. Fun episode for you today, as is always, but extra special today. Jags coming off a victory in Nashville. Going to break down the victory over the Titans, look ahead to the game against the Cowboys, and look around the rest of the NFL. I want to welcome in Kyle for this week again. Appreciate you being here.
Yeah, again, thanks for having me. Always more enjoyable when we have good things to say about the Jags.
So we're 3-3 now, 3-2 since you started kind of doing these more regularly. Is that the trend I'm seeing?
I think so. I think it's 3-3. I'm assuming the players are listening to what I have to say, and some of the coaching is taking my statistics and kind of the recaps that I'm giving and using that during the week to prepare.
Yeah, it seems pretty obvious because exactly what we talk about in these episodes, especially from your end, seems to translate onto the field from the coaching staff. But you might be 3-3, but more importantly, I think we've figured out the trend. If you pick the Jags to win and I pick the Jags to lose, the Jags end up victorious. And that's what happened this week in Nashville. Jaguars coming off a 36-22 victory in Nashville, inching ever closer to an AFC South divisional title. This game definitely helped us. 4 games left, 2 games behind the Titans as it stands. And anytime you can win a divisional game, it helps your playoff chances that much more. Kyle, how are you feeling about the Jags right now?
Yeah, very excited. The division games are always tough. Like we talked about last week, we hadn't won in Tennessee since 2013. So to be able to do that is awesome. You could definitely tell the players were more prepared, ready to go compared to last week. The Lions game, it's in the past, but it still stings, especially after winning this one, because we could be within a game right now. Nevertheless, 4 games to play. I think this is a huge springboard for the last 4 games of the year to try to finish strong and maybe give us a little confidence going into next week.
And after the Jaguars beat the Ravens back in, what would that have been, week 12, we were sitting here talking about, man, some of those tight losses are even more painful now, but it's just nice to get a victory and, all that good stuff, kind of coach speak type stuff. But now sitting at 5-8, that Giants lost, the Broncos lost, the Texans lost, a lot of those single digit losses that we suffered in September and October feel that much more important. And they wouldn't be important for a team that would be 3-10, 2-11 right now, but they are important for a team that's 5-8. But I feel like that's a part of the growing process for such a young team and more so such a young quarterback. But Trevor Lawrence putting together a lot of nice games. I think it's safe to say he's the best quarterback in the AFC South. But Kyle, how would you assess Trevor Lawrence as it pertains to the rest of the AFC or maybe even the rest of the NFL?
Yeah, I would say as far as second-year players go, he would be right up there with the best of them. I'm trying to think who else was drafted that same year as Trevor. Obviously, he was the first overall pick. But, I mean, compared to players that are, around the same, even if they weren't drafted the same year, players that were the year before. So
you had Zach Wilson.
Okay.
Zach Wilson, Trey Lance, Mac Jones, and Justin Fields were the 4 other first-round picks that year.
Yeah, so I'd say it's Trevor Lawrence and then Justin Fields as far as, what we've seen on the field so far. Trevor Lawrence, it was said coming out of college that the fundamentals are great. He's a pro-style quarterback. He's got the arm and all of that. And it was definitely on display against the Titans. He was putting that ball into some really tight windows along the sideline, just out, beating out the defender's outstretched arms. So certainly what you would like to see as far as being able to hit those passes.
And he's just simply playing smart football. His rookie season saw quite a few turnovers, quite a number of interceptions. Yeah, he did have a decent number of touchdowns. It was kind of like a Peyton Manning-esque type rookie season, if you will, and everyone kind of was drawing that comparison. And maybe even more so after how we've seen Trevor Lawrence play over the last 2 months. Since the Broncos loss, Trevor Lawrence, 71.8% completion percentage, 1,362 yards, 10 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, accompanied by a rushing touchdown. And that is pretty much from the Week 9 victory against the Raiders up until now. So he is top 5 quarterback statistically in almost every marquee category as far as passing goes. But more importantly, he's just protecting the ball. That's the biggest thing we can see. And when you have a team whose defense has shown signs of vulnerability, you can't give the opposition extra possessions.
No, and like you mentioned, protecting the ball, I mean, that's got to be on the forefront of every quarterback's mind, keeping the ball on the field with the offense and moving it down. I mean, you can see what happens when you don't, right? The Titans had 4 turnovers, and it resulted in 20 points for the Jaguars, and that's the reason we won the game. We didn't turn it over, and they turned it over 4 times.
Yeah, and even going further on the statistics, I saw this one. Trevor Lawrence on 10-plus yard throws from that Raiders win up until now. He's got a 98.7 Pro Football Focus grade, which is first in the NFL, 6 touchdowns on those throws, 0 interceptions, and 148.5 passer rating. Again, that is only on throws 10 yards or further, and a perfect completion percentage is 153.8. So he's within 5 points of a perfect passer rating, or is it 158.3?
It's something like that, but yeah, passer rating.
It's one of those, but he's near perfect as far as the rating goes, which is wonderful to see. But on the point of him playing smart football, I mean, in that game against the Titans, we saw him avoid pressure. We saw him step up in the pocket, scramble out, but he was still keeping his eyes downfield. There was a beautiful play to Jamal Agnew right on the sideline. I think everyone's seen it at this point, where he completed a pass, heads up play by Jamal Agnew, seeing his quarterback roll out, realizing he had a soft spot in the coverage, but then Trevor Lawrence delivering a perfect pass to his outside shoulder, kind of creating Agnew turning around to catch it right on the sideline. But there's just a number of throws that we can look back to and focus in on. I think at this point, it's pretty well established how good of a passer this guy is. Now, the next step is how smart of a football player can he be? And he's beginning to check those boxes, which is going to be super important for this team. The game started, though, I was worried. That's the easiest way for me to say it. I was worried that the Titans had a 6-minute drive right to start the game, go down and score. Jaguars punt the ball. Titans get the ball back. And from what we saw in the first drive, it felt like the Titans could go down again and score a touchdown. And, 14-0 following a blowout loss to the Lions, it felt like, okay, here's the same song and dance. Mm-hmm. Well, the number 1 overall pick, Trayvon Walker, stepped up big, created a strip sack fumble. Jags recover right around the 20-25 yard line and punch it in for a touchdown a few plays later. This was one of the first games where I've really seen the defense create havoc and create opportunities that then helped our offense springboard into success. Oftentimes, you'll see the offense kind of do that for the defense. This was the first time we really saw the defense step up and help spark the offense.
Yeah, and I mean, I think when you look at last week how we couldn't stop the Lions, I would assume that was a big point of emphasis going into this week. Stop Derrick Henry at all costs, make Tannehill throw it. Derrick Henry still had a good game, but when you break it down, he only had 2 yards in the second half, which is absolutely insane. And even in the first half when he was running well, we were still, limiting him enough to get the ball back and obviously, like we said, forcing the turnovers and making points out of it. So, it's awesome to see a complete game from the offense and defense. We were able to score and we were able to get turnovers. And I don't know if I remember another game this year where it's been kind of both sides doing their job.
And honestly, maybe no turnover more important outside of that Trayvon Walker strip sack fumble than the Shaq Quarterman fumble created on Derrick Henry going towards halftime, which Josh Allen recovered right on the sideline. That was kind of, maybe at least a 10-point swing, possibly a 14-point swing. Jaguars recover that fumble against the Titans off of Derrick Henry and go down and score a touchdown right before the half to make it 20-14 going into halftime. Without that kind of momentum swing, you kind of wonder where the game goes from there. At that point, It was 14-13 in favor of the Titans. Jags got the ball following halftime, so you could really go down and score a touchdown there right before the half and capitalize on getting the ball back in the third quarter. So that was a huge play, especially causing a fumble from Derrick Henry, who is not a guy that's well known to fumble the football.
No.
So go for it.
Sorry, I was going to say, I mean, just kudos to Walker, or it was Quarterman that came up with the fumble, and you just not giving up on the play. You know, Henry was on the sideline. He was kind of being taken down. He still went in there to finish it, and then heads up play by Josh Allen. And then, like you mentioned, scoring before the half. I think one of the biggest advantages in a game that can either, you know, catch you up if you're kind of behind, that can bring you back, you know, to making it a close game, or can kind of set you apart during the game, is scoring before half and then scoring after halftime if you get the ball. That those first 5 minutes after halftime and the 5 minutes before halftime are, in my opinion, some of the biggest moments of the game. And to be able to score on both those is awesome.
And the Jags got the ball back there with under 2 minutes to go in the second quarter, and had 3 timeouts, actually. I was kind of screaming at the TV. I was very frustrated in the moment. They weren't using their timeouts in that drive, and they had gotten down to the 20. I think it was maybe an Evan Ingram catch that got them down closer towards the 20. Mm-hmm. And there was about 20 seconds left. He had gotten out of bounds, and I'm sitting there thinking, okay, they still have 3 timeouts. They could easily have 45, 47 seconds left on the clock had they used the timeouts. But then a beautiful catch by Zay Jones, very dangerous pass by Trevor Lawrence. Fitting it into a tight window, tipping it off the defender's hands into Zay Jones's hands, who made a fantastic sideline catch, very aware of the sideline, got both feet in bounds. The play went to review, and there was an amazing camera angle that was on TV. It was all over Twitter as well, of Zay Jones's foot right on the sideline. Beautiful catch for him to go up 2017 going into halftime. But I do want to give props real quick to Evan Ingram. One of the most amazing games from a tight end, really in NFL history. There's 4 other tight ends in NFL history that have had 12 catches, over 150 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And I know Travis Kelce is one, Antonio Gates is one, Darren Waller's one, and I can't think of the 4th right now off the top of my head, but he's in pretty good company in that regard. That's Evan Ingram. So he had a career game in this one as well. So really everyone came out to play in this game, especially after the first few drives for the Titans went opposite of what they would expect. But Evan Ingram had a great game, and Zay Jones really had another great game too. Coming out of halftime, second half starting, Jamal Agnew, kickoff return for a touchdown, gets called back for a holding penalty, which was somewhat questionable. A lot of those do get called, unfortunately, on those kickoffs and punts. Would have been nice. It would have been his 8th career kickoff or punt return, which is a very high mark to reach. But the Jags don't waver, and they go from scoring a touchdown on a kickoff to getting the ball at the 28-yard line, and they still go right down the field and score. So this was just from start to finish, the offense clicking on all cylinders, in full control. But Kyle, thoughts on the second half for this team really closing out the game?
Yeah, so if you start the half with the kick return, I mean, that is exciting, electric stuff right there. The fact that it got called back, you know, it's easy after that momentum gets so high and then shifts back down to being called back. You know, you can maybe lose some of that excitement or momentum, but the Jags had a 7-minute drive down to their end zone and scored. I think they had like 10 minutes time of possession in the third quarter. Tennessee had -8 rushing yards in the third quarter, or excuse me, -8 total yards in the third quarter, and barely had the ball. I mean, that's just how you completely dominate your opponent, keep them off the field. So I love that sort of stuff. I love, you know, the best way to stop them from scoring is just not let them on the field. And if they do get on the field, get them off as quick as possible. So great feeling when you play a third quarter that strong. And then by the time the fourth quarter rolled around, it seemed like we were really in control of that game.
Yeah, here were the 3 Titans drives coming out of halftime after the Jags touchdown to go up 26-14. Titans 3 plays, -20 yards in a punt. Titans 1 play, -6 yards fumble. And Titans 3 plays, 0 yards punt. So in 3 consecutive drives, the Jaguars collected minus 26 total yards against the Titans. So just real dominance from the defense there. The Jags did kind of look like they took their foot off the pedal a little bit. They just managed the game, coasted into the victory, which a team like us, I don't really feel comfortable with at any point, settling for field goals versus touchdowns. But I do get it. They were continuing to try and establish the run, even though the Titans' run defense is one of the best in the league. We couldn't get it going.
Yeah, it was frustrating. ETN, 32 yards, 1.9 yards per carry. Not what we have been seeing this year. So a little worrisome. We had the ball at the goal line. He got stuffed. Luckily, Trevor ran it in. I think it might have been fourth down, or I forget if it was third or fourth down when Trevor did the kind of PA boot out to the right side. So, which was awesome. I'm happy we did that. I've been saying all year we need to use him running some more. But again, a little frustrating, a little worrisome about ETN. Hopefully we just chalk that up to, like you mentioned, the Titans run D being very good.
Yeah, that was a 2nd and 1 right at the Titans 1 yard line. Lawrence 1 yard rush for the touchdown. And funny enough, Doug Peterson after the game mentioned to reporters that was not a designed quarterback option. The play design was a full-on Travis Etienne run play up the middle. But Trevor Lawrence kept the ball under his own will and decision-making and beat the linebacker, number 53, to the corner for the touchdown with a nice stiff arm. Number 53 seen crying in the locker room after the game for the Titans, actually in an interview, broke down crying in a game. So if you haven't seen that in the locker room after the game, if you haven't seen that interview, go find it on Twitter. I think his last name was Cole, number 53 for the Titans. So the Jaguars are out here making people cry. That's the point I'm trying to get across. But here we are sitting at 5-8, a wonderful divisional win for the Jaguars, and moving in towards the middle of December with more meaningful football games. This team offensively here, I'll just put up these stats for Lawrence. 30 completions on 42 attempts, 368 yards, 3 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, and 1 rushing touchdown. Doesn't get much better than that. Career game for Trevor Lawrence as far as yards go. There's so much we can talk about with the excitement on offense. What I will say, the downside is Travis Etienne now has 4 consecutive games of under 100 rushing yards. His last 100-yard game was against the Raiders in Week 9. That is a little worrisome, but Trevor Lawrence has shown that even when the run game's not moving, he can kind of put the team on his back with the passing game. So just something to keep an eye on as we move forward into December. Anything else on this game, Kyle, before we move ahead to the Cowboys?
Not really. I mean, Riley Patterson, 3 for 3 field goals. You know, I'm a big field goal guy or special teams guy, so that was huge. Again, just emphasizing how crucial turnovers are. If you looked at the stats, you know, the Titans had a bunch of yards. We both had 22 first downs. Time of possession wasn't too lopsided or anything. We had 3 sacks and 4 turnovers on defense and 0 sacks and no turnovers on offense. So, as good as their kind of front had been to stop the rush, they did not get any sacks on Trevor Lawrence. So happy about that.
Yeah, just to add to that, the Jaguars offensive line, 0 sacks allowed in 6 games this season, which leads the NFL, 2 games ahead of the 49ers, Lions, and Cowboys, who all have 4 games allowing 0 sacks on the quarterback. So Jaguars offensive line has shown some weaknesses at points, but I think that's a testament to not only the offensive line knowing who they're protecting, but also Trevor Lawrence's ability to make decisions quickly, get out of the pocket when he needs to, but also deliver a ball quickly when he has to in the pocket. So that's huge for this team, especially coming off a Lions game that saw Trevor Lawrence almost snap a leg due to a sack right before halftime. So nice to keep Trevor Lawrence clean, especially with the toe injury, which didn't even seem to affect him in that Titans victory. So Jaguars moved to 5-8 after the 36-22 victory over the Titans, and they will stay here in Jacksonville or come back to Jacksonville after 2 weeks on the road and face a Dallas Cowboys team that sits at 10-3, second place in the NFC East behind the 1-loss 12-1 Eagles. They are currently the first wildcard team, 5th seed in the NFC. Jaguars versus Cowboys Sunday at 1:00 here in Jacksonville at the Bank. Kyle, what are your thoughts on this game?
I feel a lot better about it than I would have last week. Obviously the Cowboys struggled with the Texans. I think that was an easy look ahead spot for them. I mean, I don't know who's looking ahead to the Jaguars, but I guess, just saying that they think they could walk in there and beat Houston. So would have almost rather them crush Houston, because this will certainly be something that they discuss this week, knowing that the Jags just beat the Titans. I think it's a wake-up call for the Cowboys. So, again, I think that it should be a good game. Looking at the stats, the Cowboys do have a pretty good defense. I think they let up the 5th least amount of yards in the league. They haven't had a ton of passing yards. I think you can credit that to Dak not playing for half the season or whatever it was. They have a dual threat at running back, Tony Pollard and Zeke Elliott. Pollard's looked really, really good. A little more traditional running from both of them than some of the other running backs that are kind of more scat back type thing. Pollard is great out of the backfield as well, but don't get it twisted. He can certainly run between the tackles too. So Cowboys 3rd in points per game in the league as well. A little worried about that. The Titans, they don't score a ton of points, and we let up 22. Luckily, we outpaced them, but Cowboys do have a high-powered offense.
Yeah, sometimes you have good teams whose stats don't necessarily back up how good they are. This is a case where the Cowboys statistics do back up how good they are. 27.7 points per game, 3rd in the NFL. As far as defense goes, they only allow 17.6 points per game, which is 3rd in the NFL. So they have very high marks in both offense and defense as far as scoring goes. Jaguars 15th in scoring offense at 22.6 points per game, 15th in scoring defense at 22.6 points per game. So identical marks for the Jags when it comes to scoring offense and defense. But the disparity 100% is how these teams operate on offense. The Cowboys 144.5 yards per game on the ground, which is I think it was 5th in the NFL. So very potent ground game from the Cowboys, which makes sense. You just mentioned Tony Pollard and Zeke Elliott, and that is my biggest worry in this game. As bad as the Jags secondary has been, we really struggle with containing receiving running backs, and that's what Tony Pollard is. He had over 100 yards receiving a few games ago, which was pretty impressive for him. He had like a 50-yard touchdown catch right out of the backfield. So he's elusive. They're versatile. They can do what they want out of the backfield. And because they're both capable backs, they don't really get too exhausted. They kind of spell each other nicely. They get into the game at the right point. And the Jags defensively aren't the best in either category as far as rushing defense or passing defense. We ranked 23rd in pass defense, allowing 253, or 28th in pass defense, allowing 253 yards per game, 14th in run defense at 115 yards per game. So it will be, I think, a battle of turnovers when it's all said and done, because these teams, I think, are going to be able to move the ball a little bit on one another. But we really have to get after this Cowboys team to try and create some more possessions. And hopefully, coming off a 4-turnover game against the Titans, we can do that.
Yeah, and the other thing is the Cowboys, I think they're 2nd in sacks on the season on the defensive side. So they get after the quarterback. They got dudes in the secondary and at linebacker as well that go after the ball. So I don't think it's going to be an easy test for us. I think there is maybe some revitalization in Jacksonville, and hopefully there's a good turnout from the Jags fans. Unfortunately, we've said it before. We know how it goes. Cowboys fans are everywhere, so I have no doubt that it's going to be littered in Jacksonville with Cowboys fans. But hopefully we can hang tough and have a similar performance as we did this week. If we play like we did this past week, we should win this game.
A 2-minute drive from the Cowboys, a Zeke Elliott 2-yard touchdown run, 98-yard drive to end the game against the Texans is what it took against the Texans. Now, obviously, this is a Texans team whose only win on the year is the Jaguars, 13-6 back in October, which is a little frustrating when you look back on it. But maybe the Jags are catching the Cowboys at the right time. They do have a tendency to kind of fall asleep a little bit in December before the playoffs. I don't want to say fall apart per se, but they do have a tendency to maybe lose focus. Maybe the tape is out, whatever the case is. And maybe that Texans game was a sign of that. I'd also like to think the Jaguars have more to play for at this point. because the division is still very much up for grabs for the Jags. I think the Cowboys at this point are aware that the division title may be a little out of reach considering how the Eagles are playing. And it seems like the Cowboys pretty much have the first wild card spot locked up. So looking at it from that standpoint, I'd like to think the Jags have more to play for. Obviously, the home field advantage, but I do always like to do some trivia on this show, Kyle. So I'm going to give you some trivia here.
Okay.
The Jaguars are on a blank game losing streak versus the NFC. How many games in a row have the Jaguars lost to the NFC?
I think that would be around 32.
No, that's highballing it.
Oh, sorry. 22.
No, 20.
Okay.
Okay. Still not good. That's like 5 full seasons of NFC football play. 20-game losing streak.
Bortles was the last Jags quarterback to beat an NFC team, I know. So,
who was you said? Bortles?
Yeah.
Yeah. Week 1 in 2018 versus the Giants. The Jaguars won 20-15. That was the last NFC game the Jaguars won. Week 1 of 2018. So it's been over 4 calendar years since the Jags beat an NFC team. Ironically enough, that 20-game losing streak started in October of 2018 in week 6 when the Jaguars traveled to Dallas and lost 40-7. So I was at that game. The Jaguars were not, apparently, but I was there. But it would be a storybook ending of the losing streak for it to start against the Cowboys and end against the Cowboys. Going a step further, Jaguars 3-4 all time versus the Cowboys. Almost 500 versus the Cowboys. Their last one against them, however, was 2010, 35-17. So it's been a while since we've beaten this team. It's been a while since we've beaten an NFC team. Not a lot of history going our way, but hell, there wasn't a lot of history going our way going into Nashville. But what are your keys to this game if you had to pinpoint 2 or 3 spots for the Jaguars to win this game?
I mean, I feel like it's pretty much the same every week, and most teams kind of going with the same game plan. I guess it depends who you're playing. In this instance, it's really limit Pollard and Zeke. I think they had 3 touchdowns between the 2 of them last week. That's a tall order, but if you can hold them, make Dak be the one that has to beat you. Not to say that Dak isn't great and that they don't have good wide receivers, but it's clear that their offense relies on the productivity of their running backs right now. So to be able to kind of stop them, much like we did to Derrick Henry in the second half, like we did to Josh Jacobs in the second half of the Raiders game, kind of be able to do that is how we stay in this ball game.
Yeah, especially you don't want the Cowboys just eating up all the clock by keeping the ball on the ground.
Right.
It's going to make things difficult for the Jags if it does turn into that kind of game, considering how ETN has played the last 4 games. And as far as the rushing attack for the Jags have gone the last 4 games. So Jags 122 yards on the ground versus 144 yards for the Cowboys. So a pretty stiff advantage there for the Cowboys on the ground. And I think if it comes down to Trevor Lawrence versus Dak Prescott, and that's what determines the game, at this point, I have faith in Trevor Lawrence to outduel Dak Prescott. Dak Prescott might have more namesake in a bigger contract and a bigger market that he plays in. But right now, I think Trevor Lawrence is playing as one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. He's playing with confidence. And I think these receivers are playing with extreme confidence as well, with Christian Kirk, Zay Jones, Evan Ingram, even Marvin Jones getting in there as well. So it should be a fun one on Sunday for the Jaguars. I would say that the Jaguars beating the Titans last week probably convinced 7,500 to 10,000 Jags fans to show up on Sunday versus sell their tickets. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, I was thinking that too, that, hopefully people will go to it instead of selling it. Now that if we win, we're certainly in the mix. The Titans are playing the Chargers, who haven't looked great, but they did just beat the Dolphins, and they have to travel to the West Coast. So it's very, very possible that the Titans could lose their 4th in a row, I believe. And then if we win, we're right there. Yeah,
if we're able to win, and I would say this is the toughest game left on our schedule.
Mm-hmm.
Luckily, it's a home game. If we're able to win this and the Titans lose, we're 1 game back with 3 to play, and we have the Jets, the Texans,
And the Titans.
And the Titans
Yep.
at home. I can't remember exactly what the Titans have left, but I do know it starts with the Chargers. Let me pull it up here real quick. Chargers, Texans, Cowboys, Jags. So, a little bit of a tougher schedule for them.
But we definitely need them to lose this game and then hopefully lose the Cowboys game.
Yeah, if they go 2-2 and we're able to go 3-1 with a victory over them, right?
I think so.
Or we need them to go 1-3. We need to gain 2 games on them, right?
Yeah. So we're gonna sweep and go 4-0.
So we need to pick up 2 games on them to get to 8-9 or 9-8. I guess if we go 4-0, we're sitting at 9-8, which then allows them to go 2-2.
Yeah, if they lose to the Chargers and the Cowboys, they'll be 1-2 going into the last game versus us. So that'll be the deciding factor.
And that'll be the deciding factor. So 1-2 over these next 3. We need to be going 2-1 over these next 3, which includes a Thursday night bout on Christmas week against the Jets in New York, which we'll obviously talk about next week following the Cowboys game this week. But anything else on this Jags-Cowboys game before we move ahead, Kyle?
Nope. Looking forward to it.
Awesome. Same here. Definitely looking forward to it. Let's get to score predictions real quick on this one. Jaguars versus Cowboys. We went through the points per game, both offense and defense. But what's your score prediction for this week, Kyle?
I'm going 33-30 with Riley Patterson hitting a buzzer beater.
Buzzer beater for Riley Patterson. I'm gonna go 27-23 Cowboys in this one, which is right around their points per game. And no, I'm not just taking that for the Poojie Podcast jinx that we've established. But I do think the Cowboys are a little bit more dynamic on offense over the last few weeks with that rushing attack that they have. The Jaguars passing defense ranking near the bottom of the league, 28th in the league.
Mm-hmm.
I think that is going to be an Achilles heel and allow Dak Prescott to maybe have a better game than he has been. Their strengths kind of match well against our weaknesses, I would say. So, yeah, 27-23 Cowboys. You're going 33-30 on the foot of Riley Patterson carrying Jacksonville to a potential division title game in Week 18 versus the Titans on January 8th. But let's move ahead, fans. Thank you for being here, as always, with the Poojie Podcast on YouTube. Go find us on your preferred podcast streaming platform as well if you'd rather listen to us on the go while you're on a run, maybe at the grocery store, in school, whatever it is. But thanks for being here on YouTube as well. Subscribe and like the video. Let's move ahead with some NFL talk. Kyle, what are we buying after Week 14? Things are starting to clear up in the NFL, but just as quickly as they seem to be clearing up, they get all mixed up again with the playoff picture and who's good and who's not. What are you buying after Week 14?
Yeah, and I mean, it's no surprise they're going to make the playoffs, but the 49ers look awesome. Brock Purdy going in there, I think we had talked about the 49ers last week or the week before. Even with Jimmy G, they still look good, but Brock Purdy, I believe, might be better than Jimmy G. I know Jimmy G gets a lot of gruff, it seems. He's not that bad of a passer, but it seems like Brock Purdy just has this kind of confidence about him. He's enjoying being out there. He's known as Mr. Irrelevant, being the last pick in the draft, but the teammates certainly rallied around him. Deebo Samuel, I think the MRI was better than expected. I think it's like a MCL sprain or something. Nothing's torn. So there's potential that he could come back towards the end of the season or during the first playoff game. But yeah, Christian McCaffrey looked really good. And, even you have Brandon Ayuk, you have Kittle. So there's still people to throw the ball to. Their defense is incredible. I think that's 4 straight games where they allowed under 14 points or something like that, or under double-digit points, or I forget the stat, but they've been certainly moving right along.
Yeah, the 49ers are the real deal, and that's not to say the Bucs are a fantastic team and, that it was a massive victory. Obviously, anytime you beat Tom Brady, it's a big accomplishment, if you will. Mm-hmm. But the Bucs are not the team that we thought they were or have seen in last season or 2 seasons ago. That being said, anytime you can beat a team by 3 scores in the NFL is pretty impressive. In this case, 4 scores. They won 35-7. But yeah, the most points they've allowed over the last 6 games is 17 points to the Dolphins.
Crazy.
That's massive. So, and I would have to look at their second half points, but I'm pretty sure their second half points, they've only allowed like 1 touchdown in the last 8 weeks. in the second half. So that defense is really coming together. Obviously, they're plagued with injuries. I kind of said it on Sunday. They feel like the Baltimore Ravens of the NFC when it comes to injuries and how unlucky they are with Deebo Samuel going down. Obviously, Trey Lance is out. But you do have to give props to Brock Purdy. Now, I hope this isn't just a flash in a pan because he's new to the game and there's not a lot of tape out on him. But we have seen situations where these types of backups come in, like Mike White. Now with Brock Purdy, there's other examples as well that I can't think of at the moment. But you have these guys come in that don't have any NFL tape, and they set the league on fire for a few weeks, and then these NFL defensive coordinators learn how to adjust. Any worries about that with Brock Purdy, or have you seen pretty much from him what you think he can be?
Yeah, I mean, of course, there's always going to be that first game or two. You come in, you're naive. You haven't seen anything, so you're just going out, nothing to lose. I'm sure there might be a slight regression, like you said, with the tape and stuff. But with that said, there's also going to be him putting in more work, doing more film studies, getting more comfortable. So, I'm excited for him.
Yeah, it's a good opportunity for him. And there was an emotional video of Brock Purdy's family at the game, his dad crying in the stands, which was awesome to see how emotional it was, and just him getting a chance in the NFL and doing, Trey Lance goes down, Jimmy G goes down, you're a third string quarterback. Not often do you get a chance to play in meaningful games, and here he is leading the team to back-to-back victories for the 49ers. I'm going to go ahead and buy Detroit Lions. Now I'm buying them high. I've bought them low in the past. Detroit Lions welcome in the Minnesota Vikings and just absolutely embarrass them. I would like to say I'm surprised or it was unexpected, but from what we've seen from the Lions the last 2 months, no surprises here. We are, I think, as fans, accustomed to just thinking the Lions are terrible. But I think it's finally time to say mentally it's okay to believe that they are a good football team. And that's where we're at right now with the Lions. I'm also going to buy more stock in the Philadelphia Eagles, not just as a contender, but I would say a Super Bowl winner at this moment. They are, if I had to crown it right now, the Philadelphia Eagles are winning this year's Super Bowl, which isn't a hot take by any means. But I've been waiting for that team to slip up and just have a sour game, and they're not doing it. And they go into New York in a very meaningful game for the Giants, and they win 48-22 and just embarrass the Giants. So I'm buying even more stock in the Eagles on this one. Anything else from you on buying Week 14, Kyle?
Nope. I just had the 49ers for now. The Lions too, but yeah, you kind of said it all.
So I have a question for you right now. Chargers and Patriots sit at 7-6. Both those teams 7-6. One of them is going to make the playoffs. Who is it going to be in your opinion?
I would need to see the remaining schedule, but I'm never going to go against Bill Belichick. I know so Belichick plays the Bengals, the Raiders next week, then the Bengals, and then the
Dolphins and Bills.
Yeah, Dolphins and Bills. Okay. And then the Chargers got the Rams on the schedule, the Broncos, the Colts, and the Titans. I guess I'd have to go with the Chargers. They have a chance to win at least 3 or maybe all of those games. And unfortunately, the Patriots have a little bit of a tougher schedule down the stretch.
Yeah, and I think it's fair to say that the Chargers probably have the better weapons, and maybe they're getting healthy at the right time with Mike Williams coming back and Keenan Allen coming back and Eckler's kind of looking like himself. So maybe that team's getting healthy at the right time, and they've just been weathering the storm all season up until this point. But Kyle, that kind of takes us into what are we selling after Week 14? I'm going to start this one just with the Dolphins right now. 2 back-to-back games on the West Coast, albeit against the 49ers and the Chargers. But if you're an AFC contender, which people were writing the Dolphins into that slot in NFL lore, if you will, as an AFC contender for the 2022 season, you got to go out there and beat one of those two teams. And to come out flat and to not win either of those games, I'm selling the Dolphins at the moment just because they haven't even looked good in either of their losses. One of their touchdowns against the Chargers was like a Tyreek Hill fumble recovery.
That was crazy.
Crazy play. Yeah, crazy play. But still, they didn't show anything on tape for me these last 2 weeks to believe that they are a legitimate contender that we once thought they were.
Yeah, no, I certainly agree. It sucks to see because they have been fun to watch. Tua has been awesome. Obviously, Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle are great. Jeff Wilson Jr. and Mostert have been good. Unfortunately for them, their schedule does not get easier. I know they had the 2 games on the West Coast. Now they got to play the Bills on Saturday coming up. I think the Bills will win that game. And then they got to play the Packers, the Patriots, and the
Jets.
The Jets. So obviously the Packers aren't what they used to be, but it's still Aaron Rodgers if he's going to be playing. But aside from that, they're going to have 3 division games down the stretch for them?
Yep, 3 division games.
So that's going to be huge. And kind of on the note of the AFC East, I'm going to go ahead and tell you that I'm selling the Jets. I think I sold them. Actually, I know I sold them after their Bills W, I think. I can't remember. Or no. When was it? After they beat the Broncos, I think we talked about it. And I said they had the Patriots, the Bills, Patriots back-to-back, and then the Vikings and Bills after that. So they did beat the Bills, but they lost to the Patriots. Then they lost to the Patriots again, beat the Bears, and then lost to the Vikings, lost to the Bills. Now they got the Lions, Jaguars, Seahawks, and Dolphins coming up. All of those games are very losable. Again, they got the Dolphins as a division game. It's the last division game for the Jets. But then they got the Lions who are hot, the Seahawks who, they might be on a slide as well, and then the Jaguars. But again, with Mike White showing a lot of guts, a lot of courage, I think the weather certainly helped keep the Jets in that game this past week. Unfortunately, I just don't think they're going to make the playoffs.
Yeah, they're 2-4 over their last 6 games, and unfortunately, 3 of those losses came at the hands of a divisional rival. 2 with the Patriots, 1 with the Bills. So I can buy that you're selling. So I could see that. I am going to sell the Seahawks here, which is very painful for me to do because this is a team that I had a lot of stock in over the last few months. I was loving the way they were playing. But over their last 3 games, they're 1-3 over their last 4 games, with a loss to the Bucks, a loss to the Raiders, and a loss to the Panthers. Their only victory in the last month is against the Rams by 4 points. So I think what we saw from the Seahawks and the magic that they had created the first half of the season, I think that is all out the window at this point. So I am going to sell the Seahawks. They've overperformed this season. I will give them that. But I think the magical run that they were on is coming to an end, or has already come to an end. So I am going to sell the Seahawks at this moment. Also, we would be remiss if we didn't mention the Kyler Murray ACL injury. Not that we needed to buy or sell the Cardinals, being that they're pretty much out of playoff contention. But that pretty much, shut the door on any potential December, early January magical run. Kyler Murray out for the rest of the season with an ACL injury. What else is going on? The Bucks.
Yeah, I was gonna say, sorry to cut you off. Just, I know I said I'm selling the Jets, but I just want this to be clear. This is not me shitting on the Jets. I think they've been, dealing with a lot. Zach Wilson being out, is he even going to be the quarterback of the future? Throwing for 70 yards and then passing the buck on. That it wasn't his fault. Looking at their 2022 draft picks, Sauce Gardner, Garrett Wilson, Jermaine Johnson, and Breece Hall. Unfortunately, Breece Hall got hurt, but before he did, he was having a great year. Jermaine Johnson's the big man on the defensive line. Garrett Wilson's been coming to light, and obviously Sauce Gardner's already one of the best corners in the league. So kudos to the Jets. Their first 4 picks of this year's draft have all been impactful, have all been seeing the field, and have all been successful. Again, Breece Hall being hurt sucks, but he surely was going to rush for over 1,000 yards. He was doing really well, so you hate to see it.
Yeah, always painful when you lose any player, but especially one at such a skill position like running back. And Breece Hall was on a tear to start the season, operating at a top 5 running back level. So
those were their top. Remember, they had 3 first-round picks. Those were their top 44 picks that I just mentioned. I believe that was their top 44 picks. So you should get some good guys, but I'd say on average 2 or 3 of them work out. The fact that all 4 seem to be really doing well is great on the scouts of the Jets.
And I'll go a step further. They also lost offensive lineman Elijah Vera Tucker earlier this year. I think maybe the same game they lost Breece Hall, and he was their first round pick in 2021. So that is just an absurd number of good first round picks for the Jets, or early draft picks for the Jets. And honestly, that's what can turn a team around. You look at the Jags, hitting on Trevor Lawrence is what it feels like. Potentially hitting on Trayvon Walker, making a big play versus the Titans. You look at the Lions and what they're doing. Jamison Williams, first catch coming off an ACL injury, 48-yard touchdown, to him. Obviously, he hasn't been there all year, but it still says something when these teams that are consistently bottom dwellers end up hitting on a few guys in the draft and are able to put the pieces together. And that's what leads to these types of renaissance for teams to come out of the cellar and become forces to be had in the NFL. So nothing else really crazy from week 14, I wouldn't say. Bengals coast to an easy victory, continuing to be a potential threat in the AFC. Baker Mayfield, we will talk about this Thursday Night Football because it was so long ago we almost forget, but Baker Mayfield got traded 2 days before the Rams played the Raiders on Thursday Night Football and scores 14 points in like the last 6 minutes of the game to come back and beat the Raiders, knowing like 10% of the playbook. But good shit to Baker Mayfield, right? I mean, there's no other way to put it.
I know. I mean, I understand why some people might not like him. I've always been a Baker fan. I've always wanted him to do well. Going to the Browns is typically never good for anybody's career. That didn't work out. Went to the Panthers. Obviously didn't work out there in their QB carousel. So the fact that he was flown out there for an emergency start and getting the W, that's something that he has on tape for either the Rams or somebody else to maybe land at a team.
Yeah. And he's getting the start, I think, probably again, unless John Walford comes back. But you go out there and win a game like that, I think you've earned the right to maybe get another start, especially over a guy like John Walford. Do you have any hesitation or worries about the Minnesota Vikings at this moment?
Yeah, I mean, they couldn't stop a third down in the second half. The Lions just went down the field, and when the Vikings needed to stop to get the ball back and get back in the game, it wasn't just that they were converting the third down, but they were getting it by 5, 6, 7 yards wide open in the middle of the field. I was high on the Vikings. I thought they were mishandicapped last week. They were 2-point underdogs, I believe. Just a lot of missed opportunities on the defensive end. Justin Jefferson had 226 yards, but the defense just really couldn't help the team out at all.
Yeah, I'm extremely worried about this Vikings team, and they're 10-3 right now, and they're going to make the playoffs. But their only win by double digits was week 1 against the Packers.
Yep.
By 16 points.
They're negative 1 point differential right now. I know we've talked about this before, but there is currently 3 division leaders that are negative point differential. The Titans at negative 35, the Vikings at negative 1, and the Bucks at negative 30.
Yeah. And
the Jags are even. The Jags are even.
The Jags are the only team between the AFC South and the NFC South that don't have a negative point differential, and the Jags is 0.
Yep, the NFC South is all negative 24 or worse. The AFC East is all positive +4 or better. I know we talked about this a couple weeks ago, but it's just funny to look at kind of the point differential. The Eagles are +138 and the Cowboys are +131. So both those teams can really put it on.
And so you just mentioned that about the Vikings -1 point differential. Obviously, a large chunk of that coming at the hands of a 37-point loss to the Cowboys back in late November. So I won't go deep into their games, but their only double-digit victory week 1 against the Packers. This is a team that last season and the season before were losing a lot of close games. And there is something to be said about a team that can kind of flip that script and start winning the close games. It shows maturity, it shows growth, and I applaud that. That's fantastic. The problem I have with it is they've won all of their close games. Their losses have been massive blowouts, and their wins have been very close games that they've won on goal line stands against the Bills, or Josh Allen fumbling in the end zone on a 1-yard line, quarterback sneak to try and create space. So they've won these games in very unique ways, and I just don't think that's a sustainable way to win games. Like I said, they're going to make the playoffs. They're going to win the division, but I don't foresee them being really a threat. But I guess anytime you have Justin Jefferson, you are a threat. That's the one bright spot I would say. But Colts, Giants, Packers, Bears to close the season. They should win 3 of those 4 games if they are who we think they are. I unfortunately don't really see a bright future for them going into the playoffs, even if they do make it. So that's what I got to say on the Vikings. But anything else from week 14, Kyle, before we move ahead to week 15 real quick?
Nope.
Awesome. All right. Best game of week 15, Kyle. Week 15, 4 weeks left. What's the best game for you?
I got to go Commanders versus the Giants. Sunday Night Football, I believe it is now. Left hand up, go Commanders. This is going to be pretty much the loser of this is probably out of the playoff race. I'm looking here. I guess it will depend how the Seahawks and Lions do down the stretch, but the Commanders versus the Giants, both 7-5-1. So we will see how that goes, but I do believe that the loser of that, it might be safe to say they're maybe going to miss the playoffs.
This will be the 4th straight divisional game for the Giants. And they played Washington 2 weeks ago and tied 20-20. So 4th straight divisional game for the Giants, but the Giants are currently on a 1-4-1 skid right now over their last 6 games.
So I almost sold all of New York football when we were talking about that because I agree. I think the Giants are the same case. They started out hot, but they've been vulnerable. Saquon Barkley can only do so much. And, I think it'll be, close for them to make the playoffs as well.
Ironically enough, the Giants, they're both the same record, 7-5-1. I just think the Washington Commanders are better positioned at this point in the season. They're kind of hot at the right time. They've been winning games, and it started a few weeks ago with that victory over the Eagles. They've since they're now 3-1 over their last 4 weeks, 3-0-1, since that victory over the Eagles. So they're kind of hitting their stride at the right time. So that will be a fun game to watch. Best game for me, I'm going to go with Thursday Night Football should be fun. I expect the 49ers to win. I'm going to go Dolphins-Bills in Buffalo. Saturday Night Football, another divisional game. I say this is the best game because Dolphins beat the Bills this season, right? They already beat the Bills. So Bills are looking for revenge. They're trying to avenge the Week 3 loss in Miami. But the Bills, they need to come out and look good too because they haven't really been convincing in many of their recent victories. But the Dolphins need to look to get back on track if they want to kind of carry some momentum into the postseason or even make the postseason for that matter, which seems like they should at this point, sitting at 8-5. So I'm going to go with that AFC East. You took an NFC East matchup. I'm going to go with an AFC East matchup. Dolphins and Bills, best game of Week 15. Kyle, what's your lock of Week 15?
Oh, let's see. I think it will be
I have mine.
All right, you go ahead.
My lock of the week is Lions over the Jets.
Okay, yeah.
It's even right now, which seems poorly handicapped from what we've seen from both these teams over the last month. Lions carrying like a 5-1 record over their last 6 games into this game in New York. Jets are struggling, limping at 7-6. Lions are going to get this dub easily in week 15.
I think so too. And for mine, I think I'm going with the 49ers. They're only 3.5-point favorites. I'd assume that has to do with Purdy as well as Deebo Samuel being out. I don't think it matters. I think their defense is too stout, too tough right now. Geno Smith has not looked great. Kenneth Walker the third was out last week. I don't know what his status is going into this week, but I think the 49ers are rolling right now. 3.5 points is not enough anyway. I know we're doing straight up, but I just think that their defense is too tough right now.
And what's your upset special in Week 15, Kyle? Say it.
I don't know. I think the Cardinals might upset the Broncos, and I know they don't have Kyler Murray, but the Broncos are just horrible. They did just have a good game this past week, but I think sometimes you bring in the backup quarterback. I think we saw it earlier this year. Colt McCoy played decent when he needed to, so we're going to see. It might be a dumb one, but it kind of popped up here. They're not really playing for much. Neither of those teams are. I think it could be kind of one of those lazy games that catches the Broncos off guard.
Yeah, I like that one. Brett Rippon versus Colt McCoy. Who would have thought we would see that? My upset of the week is going to be the Falcons over the Saints. The Saints are currently 4-point favorites to the Falcons. Falcons, I think, will be playing Desmond Ridder, I want to say. But those NFC South games have been so ugly recently. I think I see a way that the Falcons can win that one. If I had to pick a second one, though, I would go Steelers over Panthers. I think the Panthers are favored by 2.5 because they did beat the Seahawks. But the Steelers held tough against the Ravens. They lost Kenny Pickett. Mitch Trubisky came in and pretty much lost that game for the Steelers on the back of 3 interceptions. But I think the Steelers could find a way to squeak out a win in Carolina as well.
Yep, I had that. Kyle? No, I was thinking that too, that would be an interesting game. I mean, the Panthers are not out of it for the NFC South, so that does make me think that they'll play tough. They're 1 game back of the Buccaneers, so that'll be interesting last 4 weeks of the season for that division.
My last question for you is this. With how crazy things are right now in the AFC South and the NFC South, you add in the NFC East at the moment and the AFC East, do you foresee there needing to be a restructure of the NFL playoff system to move to an NFL-type system where the top 8 teams make it, but they're reseeded? It doesn't matter what division they're in from the conference?
Yeah. Did you mean NHL or NBA?
No, NBA, right?
Yeah, you said NFL-type system, so I didn't know which one.
Oh, an NBA-type system. Does the NFL need to adapt an NBA-type situation where it could be 6 teams from one division in a conference and 2 from the other? It's just the top 8 make it.
Not really. I mean, then I feel like that kind of makes the divisions meaningless, and then you got to maybe change it up where you don't play 2 division games, you just play 1 division game, or you do away with divisions. So I kind of like how it's structured as is. I don't think they necessarily need to change it.
Well, I'm just getting ahead of the debate because at the moment we are trending towards 2 below 500 teams potentially hosting playoff games in week 1 of the playoffs in the wild card round, with the NFC South winner and potentially the AFC South winner both hosting playoff games against teams with 2 or 3 more wins on the season. So it's without a doubt going to be a debate this offseason after the playoffs come around. Mm-hmm. I like it how it is because I do like the idea of a divisional winner getting a home playoff game. It's fun for the fans. It makes the divisions matter that much more. Mm-hmm. Rather than just making it to the playoffs. You get a home game in the playoffs. But I do see the argument for it either way. But anything else from you, Kyle, before we head out off of episode 145?
No, I just hope we can keep the momentum up for the Jaguars. That is, would love to see a victory against the Cowboys, maybe upset them, finish what the Texans couldn't last week, and then hopefully the Titans lose to the Chargers, and then we just move on to next week.
I would love to see that. And victory over the Cowboys would be huge considering we would have a short week ahead facing the Jets on Thursday Night Football, December 22nd in New York. But what a nice early Christmas gift back-to-back wins would be versus the Cowboys and Jets, positioning us well for a playoff run into early January. So definitely looking forward to it, but appreciate you being here. Fans out there listening, thank you for being here and tuning into the Poojie Podcast, episode 145. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, like the video, comment your thoughts and predictions on the Jaguars. If you like to listen on the go find us on your preferred podcast streaming platform. Go enjoy 4 days of Week 15 football, Thursday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday Night Football. But whatever you do, go make this world a better place and take care.
How can I be the man when you're the man? How can I be the man when you're the man? How can I be the man when you're the man?